My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 27. My Aunt Carol threw a champagne glass at my face during my birthday dinner at Maggiano's in downtown Chicago on March 15th, 2024, screaming that I had no right to exist in their family anymore, and when I asked why, my Uncle David handed me a manila envelope with a Chase Bank letterhead that said I'd inherited $2,347,892.16 from my grandmother, who died 3 weeks ago, money they thought was theirs. The Veuve Clicquot was still dripping down the white tablecloth when I opened that envelope. My hands shook so badly I could barely read the words. First Commonwealth Bank. Account number 8,821 to 4,409. Irrevocable Trust. Established January 9th, 2019. 5 years ago. My grandmother had been planning this for 5 years and never told me a single word about it. But she told them. I looked up from the paper. Carol was standing now, her face red, her finger pointed at me like a weapon. David sat perfectly still, arms crossed, watching me with this cold calculation that made my stomach turn. And my cousin Jennifer, 32 years old, works at some finance company downtown, was already on her phone, texting someone frantically. I don't understand, I said. My voice sounded small, childish. Grandma Eleanor died, February 23rd. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? Carol laughed. Actually laughed. Tell you? You think we owed you an explanation? It's my birthday dinner, I said. You organized this. David leaned forward. His voice was quiet, measured, terrifying in its control. We organized this so you'd understand something, Sarah. Your grandmother made a choice. A stupid, senile choice. I stared at the document. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. $2.3 million. I'd never seen that much money in my entire life. I was a marketing coordinator at a startup that barely paid me enough to cover rent on my studio apartment on Diversey Parkway. $1,425 a month for 400 square feet and a bathroom the size of a closet. I visited her every Sunday, I heard myself say. For 2 years at Sunrise Senior Living. Where were you? Jennifer's head snapped up from her phone. Don't you dare. Don't you dare act like you were the good granddaughter. I brought her raspberry tea, I said. I sat with her when she couldn't remember my name. I was there. You manipulated her. Carol's voice cut through the restaurant. Other diners were staring now. I could feel their eyes on us. You convinced her to cut us out. You turned her against her own family. I didn't even know she had money. The words came out too loud, too desperate. I didn't know about any of this. David slid another paper across the table. His movements were deliberate, like he'd rehearsed this. This is the petition we filed this morning in Cook County Probate Court. Contestation of the trust on grounds of undue influence and mental incompetence. My throat closed. She wasn't incompetent. She had dementia, Jennifer said flatly. We have medical records. No, she didn't. She was sharp until the day she died. We have a doctor who says otherwise. David's smile didn't reach his eyes. Dr. Raymond Pierce. He examined her in November and documented severe cognitive decline. I looked down at the trust document again. My grandmother's handwriting at the bottom of the first page was shaky but clear. 3 words that made everything else disappear. Protect her from them. From them. I looked up at Carol. At David. At Jennifer still gripping her phone like a lifeline. And I understood. My grandmother hadn't just left me money. She'd left me a warning. That money was supposed to fix everything, Carol said. Her voice was quieter now, but somehow worse, colder. Do you have any idea what we've sacrificed? What we've done for this family? What did you do? I asked. She didn't answer. The waiter appeared at our table, nervous, holding a dessert plate with a single candle. I have the birthday tiramisu? Get out, Carol said without looking at him. He backed away quickly. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I made myself stay upright. I'm leaving. You'll never see that money, Sarah. David's voice stopped me halfway to standing. 6 words, delivered with absolute certainty. We have lawyers, we have evidence, we have testimony that you coerced an elderly woman with dementia into disinheriting her actual family. I didn't coerce anyone. Prove it. I grabbed my purse. The envelope, the trust document. My phone was buzzing in my pocket, but I ignored it. I walked through Maggiano's on shaking legs, past tables full of families celebrating normal birthdays, past the host stand, out into the cold Chicago night. March 15th, 27 years old, standing on Grand Avenue with $2.3 million I didn't ask for, and a family that wanted to destroy me for it. My phone kept buzzing. I finally looked. 11 texts from numbers I didn't recognize. 3 voicemails. And 1 text from Jennifer. You have no idea what you've done. I sat in my Honda Civic in the parking garage for 40 minutes. Just sat there, engine off, reading the trust document over and over by the dim overhead light. The paper smelled old, musty. Like my grandmother's house used to smell before she moved to Sunrise Senior Living on Lakeview Avenue. There were 23 pages. I made it through 7 before my hands started shaking too badly to hold them steady. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Miss Mitchell? A man's voice. Professional. Careful. My name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney with Chen and Associates on Michigan Avenue. Your grandmother retained me in January 2019. I don't understand. I know. That's why I'm calling. Your grandmother knew your family would do exactly what they did tonight. She knew they'd claim incompetence. She knew they'd file a contestation. She prepared for all of it. How did you know about tonight? Because she told me it would happen. She said when she died, your family would wait exactly 3 weeks and then ambush you somewhere public. She said they'd want to humiliate you, to make you feel small enough that you'd give up the inheritance without a fight. He paused. She was right about everything else. I assume she was right about that too. I couldn't speak. Miss Mitchell, I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Don't talk to anyone from your family. Don't sign anything they send you. Don't respond to their lawyers. Just come to my office. Why? Because your grandmother left you more than money. She left you a letter, 23 pages, written over 5 years. And in that letter, she explains everything. The line went quiet. I could hear traffic on Michigan Avenue through his phone. The sound of Chicago at night, busy and indifferent and alive. Mr. Chen, I said. What did my family do? Come tomorrow. Read the letter. Then you'll understand why your grandmother spent 5 years protecting you from them. He hung up. I sat there in the parking garage with the trust document in my lap and the city glowing through my windshield. $2.3 million. A family that hated me. A lawyer I'd never met. And a letter from my dead grandmother explaining why the people who were supposed to love me wanted to destroy me instead. I started the car. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jennifer. We know where you live, Sarah. I drove home anyway. What else was I supposed to do? Everything I thought I understood about my family had shattered in the time it took to throw a champagne glass. Everything I believed about my grandmother's death peaceful, natural, surrounded by people who loved her felt suddenly uncertain. Protect her from them. From them. I parked on Diversey Parkway and sat in the car until the motion sensor lights in the hallway timed out. Then I sat in darkness, holding that envelope, wondering what my grandmother knew that I didn't. Wondering what she'd seen that made her afraid. Wondering what she'd spent 5 years documenting while I brought her raspberry tea, and held her hand and believed we were the only honest people in a dishonest family. Tomorrow I'd read the letter. Tomorrow I'd learn the truth. Tonight I just sat there, 27 years old on my birthday, holding $2.3 million I never asked for and understanding, finally, that money doesn't buy you family. Sometimes it just shows you who they really were all along. I sat in my Honda Civic in the Maggiano's parking garage for 40 minutes, engine off, reading the trust document by the dim overhead light. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. 23 pages. Legal language that twisted and blurred. But certain things were crystal clear. Irrevocable trust. Established January 9th, 2019. Account number 8,821 to 4,409 at First Commonwealth Bank. Beneficiary. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. Sole beneficiary. The paper felt thin between my fingers, edges yellowed with time. There was a coffee stain on page 7, brown and faded, like my grandmother had been sitting at her kitchen table when she signed this, planning to give me $2.3 million I knew nothing about. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. We know where you live. I stared at those 5 words until they stopped making sense. Another buzz. Unknown number. This is your last chance to do the right thing. Then a call. Unknown. I let it ring. Then another. And another. I turned the phone to silent and watched it light up over and over in my lap. The trust listed my address. 847 West Diversey Parkway. My studio apartment where rent was $1,425 a month, and I'd been late paying twice this year. And my grandmother had been sitting on this account the whole time, watching me struggle, not saying a word. No, that wasn't right. I didn't know why she'd done this. I didn't understand anything anymore. The parking garage was freezing. March in Chicago, cold enough to see my breath. I kept reading, trying to make sense of it. The trust had been updated 4 times. August 2020, March 2022, November 2023, February 2024. That last update was just 3 weeks before she died on February 23rd. 3 weeks before her death, my grandmother was still updating paperwork to protect me. Protect me from what? My phone lit up again. This time it actually rang, vibrating hard against my leg. Unknown number. Different from the others. Something told me to answer. Miss Mitchell? A man's voice. Professional. Controlled. My name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney with Chen and Associates on Michigan Avenue. Your grandmother retained me in 2019. I need you to listen very carefully and not hang up. My mouth was dry. How did you get this number? Your grandmother gave it to me 5 years ago. She said when she died, your family would move fast. Pause. She was right. They filed a contestation petition 40 minutes ago in Cook County Probate Court. The parking garage tilted. Contestation? They can't. They're claiming undue influence. That you manipulated your grandmother while she was mentally incompetent. They have a doctor willing to testify. I couldn't breathe. The air felt too thin, too cold. She had dementia? No. His voice was sharp, certain. She had perfect cognition until the day she died. But they found a doctor who'll say otherwise. I looked down at the trust document, at my grandmother's signature, shaky but deliberate, at that coffee stain proving she'd sat with this, thought about this, chosen this. Miss Mitchell, are you still there? Yes. I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., 42nd floor. Don't talk to anyone from your family. Don't sign anything they send you. Don't respond to their lawyers. Do you understand? I understand. Good. He paused. Sarah, your grandmother left you more than money. She left you a letter. Everything stopped. A letter? 23 pages. She wrote it over 5 years, adding to it each time she updated the trust. In that letter, she explains exactly why she cut your family off and why she knew they'd come after you. I started the car without thinking. Pulled out of the parking space. Merged into traffic. City lights streaked past my windows. What does it say? Things about your family I wish weren't true. Things your grandmother discovered. Things she documented. I took the ramp onto Lakeshore Drive. The lake stretched out on my right, black and endless. What things? The line went quiet. I could hear traffic noise on his end, papers rustling. Sarah, your grandmother didn't die of natural causes. At least, she didn't think she would. My hands gripped the steering wheel. What? The letter explains what she was afraid of. And she was afraid of your family. I swerved onto the shoulder. Stopped. Cars honked behind me, streaming past. My hazard lights blinked in the darkness. She lived at Sunrise Senior Living on Lakeview Avenue, I said. My voice sounded wrong, distant. She had a nurse, Patricia Owens. She had care. I know. She died of heart failure. The doctor said. The doctor they hired said heart failure. Your grandmother's real doctor, the one she'd seen for 20 years at Northwestern Memorial, had concerns. The lake was beside me, black water reflecting nothing but city lights. What kind of concerns? Come to my office tomorrow. Read the letter. Then you'll understand. Tell me now. Not over the phone. 9 a.m. My office is at 401 North Michigan Avenue, Suite 40. 200. Can you be there? Yes. One more thing. Don't go home tonight if you don't feel safe. That made me look at my phone. What? Your family knows where you live. They're angry. Your grandmother warned me they might try something. He stopped. Just be careful. Get a hotel if you need to. The line went dead. I sat there on Lake Shore Drive with hazard lights blinking, watching cars stream past. My phone kept buzzing. More texts, more calls. I turned it face down. Finally, I drove. Not home. To a Holiday Inn Express off Interstate 90. Paid $93 for a room that smelled like cleaning chemicals and old carpet. Double locked the door. Put the chain on. I spread the trust document across the bed and tried to understand what my grandmother had been protecting me from. The TV played on mute, casting blue light across legal pages. I found something on page 19 I'd missed before. A clause about healthcare decisions, another about financial oversight, and a name. Dr. Raymond Pierce, listed as having examined Eleanor Mitchell on November 14, 2023. I grabbed my laptop, Googled him. Dr. Raymond Pierce, Naperville, Illinois, family medicine. His website looked professional. Standard doctor photos. Then I dug deeper. News article from 2022. Medical license suspended for Medicare fraud. Reinstated with probation in 2023. This was the doctor willing to testify my grandmother had dementia. My hands shook on the keyboard. I called Robert Chen. It was 11:47 p.m. He answered immediately. I found something. What? The doctor, Raymond Pierce. He lost his medical license for fraud. Silence. Then, your family doesn't know you know that yet. Don't tell them. Why would my grandmother see him? She had a regular doctor at Northwestern. She didn't see him by choice. Your Aunt Carol brought him to Sunrise Senior Living in November. He examined your grandmother without her requesting it. Your grandmother called me that same day. She was furious. The hotel room felt smaller. Why? Because Carol was building a case. Even then. 4 months before your grandmother died, Carol was already preparing to claim incompetence. I looked at the trust document. At the November 2023 update dated 3 days after Pierce's examination. She knew, I whispered. Yes, she knew exactly what they were planning. That's why she wrote the letter. That's why she documented everything. She wanted you to have proof when they came after you. Proof of what? Read the letter tomorrow, Sarah. Then we'll talk about what to do next. I didn't sleep. Just sat in that hotel room searching for information about my family. David's failed business in 2018 that lost investor money. Jennifer's credit card lawsuit filed in Cook County in 2021. Carol's bankruptcy from 2016. They needed money. Desperately. And my grandmother had known. At 8:30 a.m. on March 16th, I drove to Michigan Avenue. Parked in a garage that cost $38 for 2 hours. Took the elevator to the 42nd floor, my stomach turning the whole way up. Chen and Associates had glass doors and a waiting area that smelled expensive. Robert Chen met me himself. Late 50s, gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand and led me to his office overlooking the Chicago River. On his desk sat an envelope. Cream-colored paper. Heavy. My name written across the front in my grandmother's handwriting. I'll give you privacy, he said quietly, and left the room. I stood there looking at that envelope for a full minute before I could touch it. Then I opened it. 23 pages. Handwritten. Dated entries spanning from January 2019 to February 2024. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone and your Aunt Carol is furious. Good. Let me tell you what your family has been doing since your father died in 2009. I sat down hard in the leather chair. And I started reading what my grandmother had spent 5 years documenting. Every theft, every forged signature, every lie, every manipulation. Specific amounts, specific dates, specific evidence. She'd been collecting proof the whole time, knowing exactly what would happen when she died. By page 12, I was crying. By page 18, I'd stopped. By page 23, something had shifted inside me. Not just anger. Something colder, clearer, sharper. Understanding. When Robert Chen came back an hour later, I was standing at the window, looking out at Chicago stretching to the horizon. The letter was on his desk, pages neatly stacked. She knew they'd try to kill her, I said. Not a question. Yes. And she documented everything anyway. She stayed at Sunrise Senior Living even though she knew. Because she wanted to see what they'd do. She wanted proof. Your grandmother was the bravest person I've ever met. I turned to face him. What do we do now? He opened a file on his desk. Now we fight back. Your grandmother left very specific instructions. She didn't just want you to have the money, Sarah. She wanted you to expose them. Publicly. Completely. She wanted the world to know what they did. I looked at the letter on his desk. 23 pages of evidence. 5 years of my grandmother's careful documentation. Her final gift to me wasn't just money. It was justice. Then let's do exactly what she wanted, I said. Robert Chen smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting 5 years to destroy the people who'd hurt someone he cared about. Your grandmother would be very proud of you right now. Robert Chen's office smelled like old leather and bergamot. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. He handed me a sealed envelope, cream-colored, heavy paper, my name written in my grandmother's precise cursive. I'll give you privacy, he said quietly, and left. I stood there holding that envelope for a full minute before I could open it. My hands shook. The paper felt expensive, weighty. Inside were 23 pages, handwritten. My grandmother's shaky script filling every line. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and your Aunt Carol is furious. Good. I sat down hard in the leather chair. Let me tell you what your family has been doing since your father died in 2009. The first dated entry was January 2019. 5 years of documentation. 5 years my grandmother spent recording every theft, every lie, every manipulation. I started reading and couldn't stop. In 2015, Carol forged my signature on a home equity loan, $47,000. She said it was for Jennifer's college, but Jennifer had already graduated in 2013. I found the paperwork hidden in my garage 6 months later, tucked behind Christmas decorations in a box labeled Thomas's Things, Your Father's Things. She hid her crime in my dead son's memory. My throat closed. Thomas Mitchell, my dad, died in a car accident when I was 12. I never confronted her. I was afraid. Afraid of losing the only family I had left. Afraid of being alone. So I stayed quiet and watched her do it again. The next entry was dated August 2020. In 2018, David convinced me to invest in his business opportunity. Import-export, he said. Ground floor investment. $83,500 vanished into an LLC that dissolved 3 months later. When I asked for documentation, for proof of where my money went, he stopped visiting. 8 months of silence. Then he showed up at Thanksgiving like nothing happened, asking if I'd updated my will. I pressed my hand to my mouth. The office was too quiet. I could hear traffic 42 floors below, muffled and distant. But Carol still came. Always asking about my will, my accounts, my retirement plans. Always casual, always concerned. Mom, are you sure you're managing your finances properly? Mom, maybe you should let me help with the bills. Mom, at your age, shouldn't someone else handle these decisions? The entry from March 2022 was longer, angrier. Carol tried to get power of attorney over my finances in 2021. She brought a lawyer to my house. Told me it was just paperwork for Medicare. I asked to read it first. She got upset. Pushy. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. I told them both to leave. That night, Carol called and screamed at me for 30 minutes. Said I was getting senile. Said I couldn't be trusted with my own money. Said I'd end up losing everything, and it would be my fault. She tried to take $125,000 from my savings that year by convincing the bank I'd authorized a transfer. The bank called to confirm. I stopped it. Barely. My hands were shaking so badly the pages rattled. After your father died, Sarah, you were the only one who visited without asking for money. The only one who brought me raspberry tea and sat in silence when I couldn't remember words. You thought I didn't notice. I noticed everything. I looked up. Robert Chen was standing in the doorway. I hadn't heard him come back. Take your time, he said quietly. I kept reading. The November 2023 entry made my stomach turn. On December 18th, 2023, Carol came to Sunrise Senior Living with new paperwork. She said it was Medicare forms. It wasn't. It was beneficiary designation forms for my accounts, naming her and David as primary beneficiaries, removing Sarah entirely. The nurse, Patricia Owens, saw Carol trying to guide my hand to sign. Patricia is young, 26, sharp. She asked to see the documents. Carol refused. Patricia stopped her, told her she'd need to go through proper legal channels. Carol was furious. She threatened Patricia's job, called her incompetent, said she'd have her fired. The handwriting got shakier. After that day, I started feeling sick at meals. Dizzy, confused in ways I'd never been confused before. Not memory confusion, physical, wrong. Patricia noticed too. She started asking if I was okay. If I felt strange, I told her yes. She said she'd watch my meals. On December 22nd, I asked Patricia to save my uneaten food from dinner. She did. She kept it in a sealed container in the staff refrigerator. I had it tested privately. I flipped to the next page. My vision was blurring. The laboratory report came back on January 8th, 2024. Benzodiazepines. In my food. Not trace amounts. Deliberate dosing. Someone was drugging me. I called Robert Chen the next day. Paid him $50,000 on January 12th to create an irrevocable trust. To protect you. To document everything. To make sure when I died, you'd have proof of what they did. I reached the final pages. Dated February 19th, 2024, 4 days before she died. Sarah, I need you to know something that will sound paranoid, but I swear to you it's true. Carol came again on February 15th. She brought food, homemade soup. She insisted I eat it while she watched. I pretended to. Spilled most of it when she wasn't looking. That night, I felt sicker than I've ever felt. Patricia called an ambulance. They said it was a minor heart episode. Sent me back to Sunrise the next day. But I know what's happening. I know what Carol is doing. And I know I don't have much time left. The writing got harder to read, shakier. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need you to understand why I chose you. Not because you visited. Not because you brought tea. Because you're the only one who saw me as a person instead of a bank account. You're the only one who didn't calculate my worth in dollars. You're the only one I trust to use this money the way it should be used to build a life, not to feed an addiction to greed. The letter ended there. Mid-sentence. No signature. Just blank space where more words should have been. I looked up at Robert Chen. Where's the rest? He opened a locked drawer, pulled out a document. Laboratory report. NMS Labs. Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. Dated February 22nd, 2024. 1 day before my grandmother died on February 23rd. He slid it across the desk. I saw the word that made everything sharp and terrible and clear. Benzodiazepines. Serum level, 340 nanograms per milliliter. Therapeutic range, 50 to 150 nanograms per milliliter. Consistent with repeated intentional dosing over multiple days. She had it tested before she died, Chen said. Her own blood. Patricia Owens helped her get to a private lab on February 21st. The results came back the next day. And then she died. Yes. I stared at that number. 340 nanograms per milliliter. More than double the therapeutic dose. Enough to cause dizziness, confusion, respiratory depression. Enough to make an 84-year-old woman's heart stop. Did you call the police? Your grandmother didn't want me to. Not then. She said the evidence wouldn't be enough. They'd claim she was confused, that she took too much medication by accident. She wanted you to decide what to do with this information after she was gone. I looked at the letter. At the lab report. At 5 years of documented theft and manipulation. And finally, attempted murder. She knew they were killing her, and she documented it anyway. Your grandmother was the bravest person I've ever met, Chen said. She stayed at Sunrise Senior Living even after she knew. Because she wanted to see what they'd do. She wanted proof you could use. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at Chicago stretching to the horizon. 42 floors below, people were living normal lives. Going to work, meeting friends, not learning that their family had poisoned their grandmother for money. What do I do now? Chen pulled another file from his desk. Now you decide. Your grandmother left very specific instructions. She didn't just want you to have the money, she wanted you to have a choice. You can take the inheritance quietly, let them contest it, fight them in probate court, or, or, or you can do what she really wanted, expose them, publicly, completely, file a civil lawsuit, elder abuse, fraud, attempted murder, make sure the world knows exactly what they did. Your grandmother drafted the complaint herself. 89 pages, every theft documented, every lie exposed, every crime outlined. He opened the file. I saw my grandmother's handwriting on the margins. Notes, dates, amounts. She'd been preparing for war. If I file this, it goes public. Yes. Court records are public. The media will cover it. Your family will be destroyed. I thought about Carol at that birthday dinner. The champagne glass. The cold calculation in her eyes. The way she'd spent 15 years stealing from her own mother and then tried to poison her when she ran out of patience. My grandmother spent 5 years building this case. I said. She stayed in that nursing home knowing they were drugging her. She documented her own murder. She did all of that so I'd have proof. Yes. I turned from the window. Looked at Robert Chen. At the letter on his desk. At 5 years of my grandmother's careful, deliberate documentation. Then let's do exactly what she wanted. Chen smiled. Not a kind smile. The smile of someone who'd been waiting to destroy people who'd hurt someone he cared about. Your grandmother Eleanor Catherine Brennan would be very proud of you right now. I picked up the letter, folded it carefully, put it back in the cream-colored envelope. My grandmother had given me more than money. She'd given me truth, and she'd trusted me to know what to do with it. I walked out of Chen's office into blinding March sunlight and threw up in a planter outside the building. Benzodiazepines. Someone had been drugging my grandmother. The sidewalk on Michigan Avenue was crowded. People walked past like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just learned my family had poisoned an 84-year-old woman for money. I leaned against the cold stone wall and tried to breathe. My phone rang. Robert Chen. Come back upstairs, he said. There's more you need to see. More. There was more. I took the elevator back to the 42nd floor. My legs felt unsteady. Chen was waiting in his office with files spread across the desk, documents, photos, a laptop open to a frozen video frame. Patricia Owens saved everything, he said. She knew something was wrong. I sat down. Why didn't she call the police? She did. February 21st. Chicago PD took a report. Your grandmother died 2 days later on February 23rd at 4:18 p.m. Coroner ruled it natural causes. Heart failure, age 84, dementia patient. Standard. Except she didn't have dementia. No. Chen slid a document across the desk. But Carol told the nursing home she did. She brought falsified medical records from a Dr. Raymond Pierce in Naperville. I stared at the medical report. Diagnosis. Advanced dementia with severe cognitive impairment. Dated November 14, 2023. Signed by Dr. Raymond Pierce. Is he real? Chen slid another paper across. Very real, and very bankrupt. He lost his medical license in 2022 for Medicare fraud. He's been signing documents for cash ever since. Your aunt paid him $5,000 in November. He pulled out a canceled check. Fifth Third Bank. Date. November 10th, 2023. Pay to the order of Raymond Pierce. Amount, $5,000. Memo line, medical consultation. Carol's signature at the bottom, looping and confident. You have the check. Your grandmother hired a private investigator in January 2024. Former FBI agent named Marcus Webb. He's very thorough. I looked at the check, at Carol's signature. at the proof that my aunt had paid a disgraced doctor to falsify dementia records 4 months before my grandmother died. This wasn't impulse. This was planning. Chen opened another file. Lab report from NMS Labs in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. Case number NMS 2024884. Analysis of food sample collected December 22, 2023. Benzodiazepine detected. Lorazepam. Concentration. Consistent with intentional contamination. Patricia started collecting food samples after the December 18th incident, Chen said. She saved portions from 6 different meals between December 22nd and January 4th. 4 tested positive. 4 meals. 4 that she saved. Your grandmother ate 3 meals a day at Sunrise Senior Living for 2 months after Carol brought those forged dementia papers. We don't know how many meals were contaminated. We only know about the ones Patricia saved. The office felt too small. Too hot. I stood up and walked to the window. Chicago stretched below, indifferent and alive. Somewhere down there, Carol was probably having lunch. David was probably at work. Jennifer was probably answering emails. Normal day. Normal lives. What about the February blood test? I asked. The one that showed 340 nanograms per milliliter. Therapeutic range is 50 to 150. Your grandmother had more than double the maximum safe dose in her system when she died. I turned around. Why isn't this enough for criminal charges? Because proving intent is nearly impossible without a confession. Carol can claim your grandmother took too much medication by accident, that she was confused, that the dementia diagnosis explains everything. The forged medical records actually protect Carol in criminal court. They create reasonable doubt. So she gets away with it. Not exactly. Chen pulled a flash drive from his desk drawer. Security footage from Sunrise Senior Living, December through February. Your grandmother requested the facility save everything. They did. He plugged it into his laptop. Video appeared. Grainy, overhead angle. My grandmother's room at Sunrise. Timestamp. December 18th, 2023, 2:47 p.m. Carol Mitchell entered, carrying a manila folder. She wore a cream-colored coat and heels. Professional. Put together. She smiled at someone off camera, probably a nurse. Then she walked into my grandmother's room and closed the door. Chen fast-forwarded. This next part is from February 20th, 2 days before your grandmother got that final blood test, 3 days before she died. The timestamp changed. February 20th, 7:15 p.m. Carol and David entered together. My grandmother was in bed, reading a book with a dark blue cover. She looked up, saw them, and her expression changed. Fear. Clear, unmistakable fear. David closed the door. Carol pulled a chair close to the bed. They talked. I couldn't hear audio, but I could see my grandmother shaking her head, over and over. No, 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 no. Carol pulled out papers from her purse, unfolded them, pointed at something. David moved to the other side of the bed, blocking the door, blocking escape. What are they showing her? Beneficiary designation forms. Patricia found copies in the trash later. They wanted her to sign over the Wells Fargo account. $380,000. They'd already tried a wire transfer earlier that day. The bank blocked it with a fraud alert. On screen, Carol kept pushing the papers at my grandmother. My grandmother kept refusing. And then Carol did something that made Chen pause the video. She reached into her purse, pulled something out. Small, white, a pill bottle maybe, or a vial. The angle made it hard to see. She looked around, checked that David was blocking the door. Then she opened my grandmother's water bottle, the clear plastic one sitting on the nightstand. And she added something, poured it in, stirred it with a pen from her purse, closed the cap, placed it back. My grandmother didn't see it happen. She was focused on the papers Carol kept pushing at her face. My hands were shaking. Do you have this in higher resolution? No, but it's enough. You can see her open the bottle. You can see her add something. You can see her close it and put it back. The next morning? Your grandmother called me at 6 a.m. She said she needed the trust executed immediately, that she was afraid, that she knew she was running out of time. I had the documents couriered to Sunrise that same day. She signed them at 10:30 a.m. on February 21st with two nurses as witnesses. Patricia Owens was one of them. I stared at the frozen video. Carol's hand on the water bottle, the white vial hidden by the angle. Did she drink it? Chen clicked play. The footage continued. Carol and David argued with my grandmother for another 6 minutes. Then they left. Carol took the papers with her. David opened the door. They walked out at 7:26 p.m. At 7:31 p.m., my grandmother reached for the water bottle. She was alone, still sitting up in bed with that blue book. She unscrewed the cap. She drank. Long, deep swallow. Then another. She put the bottle down. Went back to reading. Chen fast-forwarded again. She called Patricia at 8:05 p.m., said she felt dizzy. Patricia came to check on her. Your grandmother told her what happened, what Carol did. Patricia saved the water bottle. It tested positive for lorazepam. 400 milligrams dissolved in 16 ounces of water. That's what killed her. That's what contributed to the heart failure that killed her 72 hours later. The medical examiner found elevated benzodiazepine levels, but attributed them to prescribed medication. Your grandmother had a legal prescription for lorazepam, 0.5 milligrams as needed for anxiety. Carol poisoned her with her own medication. I couldn't look away from the screen. From my grandmother drinking that water, trusting it, not knowing. She knew, I said. After she drank it, she knew what Carol had done. That's why she called Patricia. Yes, and that's why she called me the next morning and executed the trust. She knew she didn't have much time. Patricia Owens. Employee ID, SL 4409. Worked at Sunrise Senior Living since 2018. A 26-year-old nurse who'd saved evidence and protected my grandmother and called the police when nobody else would. I needed to thank her. I needed to make sure she knew what she'd done mattered. This still isn't enough for murder charges? No, but it's enough to destroy their probate case. It's enough for a civil lawsuit, and it's enough to make sure everyone knows what they did. Chen pulled out another document, 89 pages. Civil complaint, drafted by Eleanor Catherine Brennan and Robert Chen. Charges: elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, attempted murder. Defendants: Carol Mitchell, David Mitchell, Jennifer Mitchell, Dr. Raymond Pierce. Damages sought, $2.8 million, plus punitive damages. Your grandmother wrote this? We wrote it together. She was very specific about what she wanted. She didn't just want you to have the money, she wanted them exposed. She wanted the world to know exactly what they did to her. I looked at the complaint, at my grandmother's notes in the margins, at 5 years of careful documentation culminating in this. She'd known she was going to die, known Carol was poisoning her, and she'd spent her final weeks building a weapon for me to use after she was gone. When do we file? Chen looked at me for a long moment. Are you sure? Once we file, this becomes public record. The media will cover it. Your family will be destroyed. There's no going back. I thought about my grandmother reaching for that water bottle, about her drinking poison and knowing, about her calling me every Sunday while Carol was drugging her food and forging documents and paying bankrupt doctors to declare her incompetent, about her spending $50,000 on January 12, 2024, to hire Robert Chen to protect me from her own daughter. She spent 5 years preparing for this moment, I said. She documented everything. She collected evidence. She stayed in danger so we'd have proof. And then she died knowing Carol had won, except she didn't win, because my grandmother left me this. I picked up the complaint. 89 pages of truth. File it, I said. File it today. Let everyone see exactly what they are. Chen smiled, not a comforting smile. The smile of someone about to go to war. Your grandmother would be very proud of you. I looked at the frozen video on his laptop. My grandmother, reading in bed, 48 hours before she died. Still fighting, still documenting, still making sure I'd have everything I needed to finish what she started. She'd given me more than money. She'd given me justice. And I was going to make sure everyone knew her name. I sat in the Starbucks across from Carol's house in Naperville for 2 hours, watching her BMW come and go, Robert Chen told me not to confront them. I went anyway. Her house was at 1847 Hobson Road. $740,000 according to Zillow. 3-car garage. Perfectly manicured lawn. The kind of house you buy when you steal from your mother for 15 years. It was March 18th, 2024. 3:30 in the afternoon. I'd been sitting there since 1, drinking coffee that tasted like cardboard, working up the nerve to cross the street. Her BMW X5 was in the driveway. License plate AL 4782. Black, new. Probably cost more than I made in 2 years at my marketing job. I opened the voice memo app on my iPhone 13. Hit record. Put the phone in my jacket pocket. Then I walked across the street and rang her doorbell. Carol answered wearing yoga pants and a Northwestern sweatshirt. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. She looked normal. Like someone's nice aunt. Not like someone who'd poisoned an 84-year-old woman. Sarah. She didn't sound surprised. What are you doing here? We need to talk. She stepped aside. Let me in. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something baking. I followed her to the kitchen. Granite countertops. Stainless steel appliances. She went back to chopping vegetables on a wooden cutting board. I know what you did at sunrise, I said. December through February. I have the security footage. She didn't pause. Didn't even look up. Just kept chopping carrots into perfect little circles. You should have stayed out of this, Sarah. You poisoned her. Carol finally looked up. Set down the knife. Poisoned? Don't be dramatic. I gave her something to help her sleep. She was agitated, confused. She didn't have dementia. She was 84 years old, talking nonsense about being robbed, hiding money from family, accusing people because you were robbing her for 15 years. Carol set down the knife, crossed her arms. That money was supposed to be split 4 ways. Your father, me, David's share, and Eleanor's care. When your dad died in that accident in 2009, you took his share. You took everything. Someone had to manage her finances. She was getting older, making bad decisions. I pulled out my phone, showed her the photo I'd taken of the canceled check. $5,000 to Dr. Raymond Pierce. November 10th, 2023. You paid a disgraced doctor to falsify dementia records. Carol glanced at the photo, shrugged. Raymond is a family friend. He did an evaluation. A legitimate evaluation. He lost his medical license for Medicare fraud in 2022. And it was reinstated. He's perfectly qualified. Jennifer appeared in the doorway. My cousin. 32 years old. Works at Deloitte Chicago doing something with audits. She was holding a coffee mug with a cat on it. Mom's right, she said. Grandma promised that money would take care of the whole family. Not just you. She promised nothing. I read the letter. 23 pages. She documented everything you stole. 47,000 in 2015. 83,500 in 2018. The attempted wire transfer for 125,000 in 2021. Carol smiled, cold, calculated. A letter from a woman with dementia. Good luck proving anything. I have lab reports. From NMS labs in Pennsylvania. Showing benzodiazepines in her food. In her blood, levels consistent with repeated, intentional dosing. Medication she was prescribed. That she took on her own. Confused elderly people often take too much. I stared at her. At the complete absence of guilt in her face. She genuinely believed this. She genuinely thought she'd done nothing wrong. You tried to kill her for money. I tried to help her. She was suffering, confused, afraid. The medication helped her sleep, helped her relax. If she took too much sometimes, that's not my fault. Jennifer nodded. Actually nodded. Like this made perfect sense. You stole from her for 15 years and when she finally cut you off, you poisoned her. Carol picked up the knife again. Started chopping celery. I managed her finances because she couldn't. I made decisions because someone had to. And when she started acting erratically, accusing me of theft, threatening to disinherit the whole family, I did what any loving daughter would do. I made sure she was comfortable. The garage door opened. David walked in carrying grocery bags from Whole Foods. He saw me sitting at the kitchen island and stopped. His face changed. Not surprise. Calculation. Sarah, what are you doing here? I stood up. I came to tell you I'm not contesting the trust. You can't have it. Any of it. Carol laughed. Actually laughed. Sweetheart, you don't understand how this works. We filed the petition in Cook County Probate Court. We have Dr. Pierce's affidavit. We have witnesses who'll say you manipulated Eleanor, isolated her, turned her against her family. Patricia Owens, I interrupted. The nurse who stopped you from forging beneficiary documents on December 18th. Employee IDSL 4409. She's willing to testify. So is Marcus Webb, the private investigator Grandma hired in January, former FBI. So is Robert Chen. And so is the laboratory that tested Grandma's food. Silence. David set down the grocery bags. Carol's smile vanished. Jennifer looked between them, confused. What food? Jennifer asked. Nobody answered her. I pulled out my phone. Stopped the voice memo recording. 47 minutes. Hit send. Watched the file upload to Robert Chen's secure email address. That was Carol admitting she drugged Grandma, saying she gave her something to sleep. Recorded. Time-stamped. Admissible in civil court under the crime. Fraud exception. David took a step toward me. Not threatening exactly, but close. Too close. You have no idea what you just did, he said quietly. You just declared war on your own family. I walked to the door, turned back. No. Grandma declared war on you 5 years ago when she established that irrevocable trust on January 9th, 2019. I'm just finishing what she started. I was in my Honda Civic, engine running, when David came out onto the driveway. He held up his phone. Took a photo of my license plate. Then he walked to my window. I locked the doors. We know where you live, Sarah Mitchell, he said. 7 words. Clear through the glass. 847 West Diversey Parkway. I drove away, hands shaking, heart pounding. I made it 3 blocks before I had to pull over. My phone rang. Robert Chen. I got the recording, he said. This is good. This is very good. She admitted to drugging your grandmother. On tape, with you as a witness. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. I know. That's what makes her dangerous. People who believe they're justified can do terrible things. He paused. Where are you right now? 3 blocks from her house. Parked. Don't go home. Not tonight. Get a hotel. Somewhere they won't look. Use cash if you can. I'm filing a restraining order first thing tomorrow morning. And Sarah? That recording just made our case 10 times stronger. Your grandmother would be proud. I drove to a Holiday Inn in Oakbrook. Paid $112 cash for a room on the 3rd floor. Double-locked the door. Put the desk chair under the handle. I listened to the recording 3 times. 47 minutes of Carol explaining, justifying, reframing, never denying, never apologizing. Just explaining why she'd had no choice but to drug her own mother. Because in Carol's mind, the money was already hers. My grandmother was just holding it temporarily, and when she refused to give it up willingly, Carol simply took what was already meant to be hers. That's what made it so terrifying. She didn't see herself as a thief or a murderer. She saw herself as someone collecting a debt, someone taking back what was rightfully hers. And people who believe they're owed something will do anything to collect. I thought about my grandmother on February 20th, watching Carol put something in her water bottle, drinking it anyway because she was building a case. Because she wanted proof. Because she knew that without evidence, nobody would believe her own daughter had tried to kill her. She'd sacrificed herself to give me ammunition, and I was going to use every last piece of it. The next morning, I met Robert Chen at his office on Michigan Avenue. He'd already filed the restraining order against Carol, David, and Jennifer, and he'd prepared the civil complaint. 89 pages, ready to file. Once we file this, it's public record, he said. The media will cover it, your family will be destroyed. There's no going back. I thought about Carol chopping vegetables. About her explaining why drugging an 84-year-old woman was actually an act of love. About David taking a photo of my license plate. About Jennifer nodding along like poisoning was reasonable. File it, I said. He did. 3 days later, the Chicago Tribune ran the story. family accused of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and attempted murder. The article included details from the complaint, the forged medical records, the laboratory reports, the security footage. Everything my grandmother had spent 5 years documenting. Carol's Facebook went private within hours. David deleted his LinkedIn. Jennifer stopped answering her work phone. And I learned something important. The people who hurt you don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like your Aunt Carol, chopping vegetables in her expensive kitchen, genuinely believing she did nothing wrong. Sometimes evil doesn't know it's evil. And that's what makes it so dangerous. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express on I-88, door double locked, recordings still saved in 3 separate cloud backups. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet. I sat on the bed with my laptop, uploading the 47-minute recording to Google Drive, Dropbox, and a USB drive I kept in my purse. If something happened to me, Robert Chen had instructions to release everything. At 10:22 a.m. on March 19, 2024, my phone rang. Robert Chen. Their lawyer just called. Mitchell Strauss from Strauss and Kellerman, 28th floor downtown. They want to settle. I sat up. Settle what? They're the ones who filed the contestation. They'll drop it. Completely. If you give them $800,000. I laughed. Actually laughed. 800,000? That's what they think this costs? They think you're young and overwhelmed. They think you'll take the deal and this goes away quietly. What do you think I should do? Chen was quiet for a moment. Then, I think you should do what your grandmother wanted. An hour later, I was back in his office on Michigan Avenue. He slid a document across the desk. 89 pages. Civil complaint. Filed in Cook County Circuit Court. Drafted January 2024. She wrote this 6 weeks before she died, Chen said. Every charge documented. Every theft listed with dates and amounts. Every witness named. She wanted this filed publicly. She wanted the world to know what they did. I read the caption. Sarah Mitchell, as trustee of the Eleanor Catherine Brennan Trust, plaintiff, versus Carol Mitchell, David Mitchell, Dr. Raymond Pierce, and Jennifer Mitchell, defendants. This name's Jennifer, too. Jennifer helped Carol create the fake dementia narrative. She brought Dr. Pierce to Sunrise Senior Living in November. Your grandmother saw her, documented it. Jennifer's my cousin. We grew up together. Chen's voice was quiet but firm. Jennifer chose her mother over the truth. Eleanor documented that choice. I kept reading. Claims: elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, theft, intentional infliction of emotional distress, unjust enrichment. Damages sought: $2.8 million, plus punitive damages. The last page had a list of media contacts: Chicago Tribune, NBC Chicago, WGN News. My grandmother had prepared a press release. She was orchestrating revenge, I said. She was orchestrating justice. There's a difference. I looked at the complaint, at my grandmother's notes in the margins, at the press release she'd written herself, explaining in clear, simple language what her daughter had done to her. File it, I said. You're sure? Once this is public? I'm sure. Chen handed me his phone. Then tell them yourself. I dialed Mitchell Strauss, put it on speaker. Mr. Strauss, this is Sarah Mitchell. I'm rejecting your settlement offer. He sighed. Miss Mitchell, I strongly advise you to reconsider. Litigation is expensive, time-consuming. I'm also filing a civil lawsuit against your clients. Elder abuse, fraud, theft, attempted murder. Silence. Long silence. Then, attempted murder is a serious accusation. You have no proof. I have security footage of Carol Mitchell poisoning my grandmother's water on February 20th at 7:15 p.m. I have lab results from NMS Labs showing toxic levels of benzodiazepines. Case number NMS 20248842. I have a nurse willing to testify. Patricia Owens, employee ID SL 4409. I have a private investigator's report from Marcus Webb, former FBI, and I have 47 minutes of recorded audio where Carol admits to drugging her. More silence. I could hear him breathing. Those recordings may not be admissible in Illinois without two-party consent. They're admissible in civil court under the crime fraud exception. Robert Chen already checked. Illinois statute. Your clients were committing a crime. The recording is evidence. I heard papers shuffling. Strauss talking to someone in the background. Hand over the phone. Muffled voices. He came back. My clients are willing to negotiate. Perhaps we could discuss a different settlement structure. No negotiation. Drop the trust contestation by 5 p.m. today, or the lawsuit gets filed tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And Mr. Strauss? We're also sending the complete case file to the Cook County State's Attorney. Let them decide if it's criminal. I hung up. Chen looked at me with something like pride. Your grandmother would be very proud of you right now. She did all the work. I'm just pulling the trigger. We waited. Chen ordered lunch from the deli downstairs. Sandwiches that cost $18 each. I couldn't eat. Just sat there watching the clock. At 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before deadline, Mitchell Strauss emailed a notice of voluntary dismissal. The contestation was withdrawn. Carol Mitchell, David Mitchell, and Jennifer Mitchell voluntarily dismissed all claims against the Eleanor Catherine Brennan Trust. It was over. The trust was mine. Uncontested. Chen opened champagne. Expensive stuff from his office bar. We toasted. To Eleanor, he said. To Grandma. At 4:52 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Sarah? Jennifer's voice. Crying. Sarah, please. You're destroying my family. Mom made mistakes, but she's still my mom. Can we just talk? Please? I almost said yes. Almost. Then I remembered my grandmother's letter. The fear in her face on that security footage on February 20th. The water bottle. Carol's hand adding something. My grandmother drinking it. Jennifer, your mom tried to kill my grandmother for money that was never hers. Silence. Then her voice changed. Quiet. Cold. You're going to regret this. She hung up. 2 hours later, someone tried to break into my apartment on Diversey Parkway. A neighbor heard glass breaking and called 911. Chicago PD responded at 7:03 p.m. No suspect found. But they left a note on my windshield, printed in block letters on white paper. Family takes care of family. The officer took photos. Filed a report. Said they'd increase patrols in the area. I called Robert Chen from the police station. Don't go back to that apartment, he said. Not tonight. Not until we get a restraining order. I already have a restraining order. A civil one. We need a criminal one. I'll file an emergency petition tomorrow morning. Until then, stay somewhere they can't find you. I drove to a different hotel. This time in Schaumburg. Extended stay America. $106 for a room with a kitchenette. I paid cash, used a fake name. Parked my car 3 blocks away. At 9 p.m., Robert Chen emailed me a PDF. The civil lawsuit. Filed that afternoon in Cook County Circuit Court. Case number 2024CH03847. Public record. By midnight, the Chicago Tribune had picked it up. I saw the headline on my phone. Granddaughter accuses family of elder abuse. Attempted murder in fight over $2.3 million trust. The article included details from the complaint. The forged medical records. The drugged food. The security footage. Everything. My phone started ringing. Numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off. At 2 a.m., I finally fell asleep with the desk chair wedged under the door handle and pepper spray on the nightstand. I dreamed about my grandmother. She was sitting at her kitchen table, the one with the yellow tablecloth, drinking coffee and writing in that letter. 23 pages, 5 years of documentation. She looked up at me and smiled. Finish it, she said. I woke up at 6 a.m. to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The story had gone viral, and my family was about to learn what happens when you underestimate a 27-year-old woman with a dead grandmother's evidence and nothing left to lose. 3 months later, I sat in the First Commonwealth Bank on LaSalle Street, signing the final trust distribution papers. $2,347,892.16. Transferred to my name. June 14th, 2024. The pen felt heavy in my hand. Maria Gonzalez from Vanguard Personal Advisor Services sat across from me, explaining investment options in a voice that sounded like she was talking underwater. I couldn't focus, just kept staring at that number. My grandmother had lived on Social Security and a small pension, $1,400 a month. She clipped coupons, reused tea bags, wore the same coat for 10 years. And she'd been sitting on this the whole time. No, not sitting on it, protecting it. From them. Miss Mitchell? Maria's voice pulled me back. Are you ready to sign? I signed. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. The same signature I'd practiced in middle school, trying to make it look grown up. Now it was transferring millions. Congratulations, Maria said. She smiled like this was a happy occasion. Like I hadn't just spent 3 months fighting my own family in court. Like my grandmother hadn't died knowing her daughter tried to poison her. I walked out of the bank into June sunlight. Chicago was alive. People everywhere. Tourists taking photos. Businessmen on phones. A woman selling flowers on the corner. I bought a bouquet. White roses. $18. Drove to Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois. Found my grandmother's grave under an oak tree. The headstone was simple. Eleanor Catherine Brennan Mitchell, 1940 to 2024. Beloved mother and grandmother. They'd left off the part about her daughter trying to kill her for money. I sat on the grass, put the roses down, started talking like she could hear me. I finished it, Grandma. They dropped everything. The money's mine. A breeze moved through the oak leaves, sounded like whispers. And I finally understand why you chose me. It wasn't because I visited you every Sunday. It wasn't because I brought raspberry tea. It was because you knew I'd survive them. You knew I was strong enough to stand alone. My voice cracked. I took a breath. You were teaching me, even at the end, that family isn't blood. Family is who protects you when everyone else wants something from you. I stayed there for an hour, just sitting, thinking about the civil lawsuit that settled privately in May. Carol and David paid $175,000 to make it go away. Admitted no wrongdoing, just paid and disappeared. The next day, I met Patricia Owens at a coffee shop in Lakeview. She looked different outside Sunrise Senior Living. Younger. She was wearing jeans and a DePaul University sweatshirt, 26 years old. The woman who'd saved evidence and protected my grandmother when no one else would. I handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $10,000 and a letter I'd written at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. You don't have to, she started. Yes, I do. You saved her. You saved me. This doesn't even come close. Patricia opened the letter. Read it. Her eyes got wet. Your grandmother talked about you all the time. She said you were the only one who saw her as a person, not a bank account. I didn't know she had money until she died. Patricia smiled. Sad but knowing. She knew that. That's exactly why she left it to you. We talked for 2 hours. She told me stories about my grandmother I'd never heard. How Eleanor would sneak extra cookies from the dining hall and share them with other residents. How she organized a protest when Sunrise tried to cancel movie nights to save money. How she kept a journal where she wrote down every kind thing people did, just to remember that goodness existed. She was scared at the end, Patricia said quietly. But she was also angry. She told me anger was useful, kept her sharp, kept her planning. I thought about that. My grandmother, 84 years old, being drugged by her own daughter, and instead of giving up, she got angry, started documenting, building a case, making sure I'd have everything I needed to fight back. That afternoon, I donated $50,000 to Sunrise Senior Living for elder abuse prevention training. The administrator cried when I handed her the check, said it was the largest donation they'd received in 15 years. On June 20th, I signed a lease for a 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, $1,700 a month. More than my studio on Diversey, but it had a real kitchen and windows that let in actual sunlight. I could afford it now. Could afford a lot of things. But I kept thinking about my grandmother's letter. 23 pages. 5 years of documentation. All that planning, all that fear, all that courage, just to make sure I'd be okay. That's when I decided. I quit my marketing job on July 1st. My boss was shocked. Tried to counteroffer. I said no. I had other plans. In September 2024, I filed paperwork to establish a nonprofit called Eleanor's Trust. Mission: help families recognize and report elder financial abuse, provide legal resources, connect victims with investigators, make sure what happened to my grandmother didn't happen to other people. We launched with a website, a hotline, and partnerships with 3 elder law attorneys in Chicago. By November, we'd helped 12 families in Illinois, 1 in Wisconsin, 2 in Indiana. People who called because their parents' money was disappearing, because a sibling was forging documents, because someone was drugging their grandmother, and they didn't know what to do. I hired Patricia Owens as our first program director. She'd been promoted to director of patient advocacy at Sunrise, but she wanted to do more, wanted to fight back on a bigger scale. My family, meanwhile, disappeared. Carol and David moved to Scottsdale, Arizona in July. Fresh start, away from the whispers, away from the Chicago Tribune articles, away from neighbors who'd read about what they did. Jennifer deleted all her social media, changed her phone number. Last I heard, she left Deloitte. Dr. Raymond Pierce was investigated by the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. Turns out forging medical documents for cash violates reinstatement terms. His license was suspended again in August. Criminal fraud charges pending. And me? I turned 28 on March 15, 2025, exactly 1 year after that nightmare dinner at Maggiano's where Carol threw a champagne glass at my face and handed me an envelope that changed everything. I went back to the same restaurant, Maggiano's Little Italy on Grand Avenue, asked for the same table. The host looked at me weird but seated me anyway. I ordered Veuve Clicquot, same champagne Carol had thrown, $87 a bottle. I didn't care. The waiter approached nervously. Same guy from last year. He recognized me. I could see it in his face. "Ma'am, is everything okay?" I smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in months. "Everything," I said, "is exactly as it should be." And I meant it. Because I finally understood what my grandmother spent 5 years trying to teach me. The people who love you don't ask you to make yourself smaller so they can take more. They don't poison your water, or forge your signature, or hire disgraced doctors to declare you incompetent. They don't threaten you when you stand up for yourself. Real family shows up with raspberry tea and sits in comfortable silence. Real family protects you without asking for payment. Real family doesn't need to be blood. I raised my glass to the empty chairs around me. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered, "for seeing me, for saving me, for trusting me with the truth." The champagne was cold and perfect. The restaurant was loud with other people's celebrations. And I sat there alone, surrounded by the ghost of last year's betrayal, and felt, for the first time in my life, completely free. My grandmother didn't just leave me money. She left me proof that I was worth protecting, that I deserved to be believed, that choosing myself over family wasn't selfish, it was survival. And that's a lesson worth more than $2.3 million. Though I'll be honest, the money helps.